Here's what you might have missed from the federal leaders' English debate. Let's get into it. 4 leaders share the stage for the final time on Thursday night. This comes just as Canadians are about to cast their vote, with advanced polling opening as early as this weekend. Liberal leader Mark Carney was the target for much of the debate.
You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy.
My record is a month long as Prime Minister.
Mr. Carney, you had time, as you mentioned, not very long time, but as Prime Minister, you showed us your priorities. The first thing you did, you made a tax cut for millionaires, which was reversing on the capital gains.
You are becoming a real Canadian leader, saying one thing in French and another one in English.
This continued for 90 minutes into the event, with other leaders peppering Carney during a round when they could ask one question to any opponent.
Mr. Singh, you have the first option here. Who do you want to ask your question of?
Mr. Carney.
I want to know, will you, before the election, reveal all the details of your assets?
Carney joked that he would use his time to ask himself a question, but ended up using it on Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, questioning about his lack of security clearance while serving as opposition leader.
I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Poilievre. Why not?
Former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also came up several times.
Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that you are any different than the previous 10 years of Liberal government?
I do my own talking points. Thank you very much. I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
There was way more crosstalk in the French debate on Wednesday.
Conservatives have a plan for change. And that plan includes
voted against every measure to help people out.
If I could, cutting income taxes. Because hard work is actually being
dental
punished.
Care costs. You want to save people $2,000, but cut their dental care, which is thousands of dollars.
False.
Cut their child care, which is thousands of dollars. Cut pharmacare coverage, which is thousands of dollars.
False.
That's not a very good math deal right there.
The debate also addressed the Republican elephant in the room, Canada's relationship with the United States. And leaders mostly repeated their talking points from the last few weeks.
90% of guns that come in that are used in crime are smuggled illegally over the porous, Liberal-run borders.
The border
and that's why the police,
border officers.
It's not true. And that's
you
why
literally
the police,
cut the border officers.
The police,
in the
actually,
facts.
if I could.
Each leader also got to say what they thought was Canada's biggest security threat.
The physical security threat to our country is the rampant crime wave that is running out of control.
I think the biggest security threat to Canada is China.
Mr. Singh.
Biggest security threat, illegal guns and drugs coming across the border, and cuts to services that would make our public safety and security even worse.
The fact that neither Quebec or Canada is able to protect itself, and that we are still dependent and entirely dependent on Americans to protect us.
They also spoke about Arctic sovereignty, with many of the leaders talking about the need to build up Canada's military in the north.
Because the Russians want to make incursions into our waters.
And how Canada needs to step up its role to address violence in Ukraine and the Middle East.
We must help Ukraine, but we also must help the civilians of Gaza, and we must destroy Hamas, which is a terrorist organization.
People in Israel and in Palestine deserve to live in peace and security. And Mr. Carney, to date, you've not acknowledged that what's going on in Gaza is now clearly become a genocide. It's important to call things out as they are, and you've not done that.
Yes, two-state solution, but it has to be a viable and free Palestinian state. Mr. Poilievre rightly mentioned Iran. The Iranian sponsors in this region, we have to be clear-eyed about the fundamental risks of Iran.
My answer is that we should continue to support Ukraine. We don't need to follow the Americans in everything they do. When they're wrong, then we will stand on our own and with other allies.
Public safety and security came up under the lens of the notwithstanding clause. That's a section under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Poilievre said he would use it to get tougher on repeat criminal offenders if he becomes Prime Minister.
We will use it to protect the charter rights of law-abiding Canadians. I'm interested in the rights of victims. Mr. Carney seems to be very interested in the rights of criminals.
But some leaders thought that would lead to another danger.
I think it's a very dangerous slope to override judgments of the Supreme Court of Canada.
Let's not let Mr. Poilievre get away with making this ludicrous claim that anyone on this stage thinks that violent crime should get a less severe penalty.
They also talked about the dangers of climate change and how that could impact Canada's energy sector. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet didn't mince words about his party's stance on an east-to-west pipeline.
I'm sorry to crash your party, guys, but you are telling fairy tales. Clean oil and gas is a fairy tale.
When I was born and when I was growing up in Edmonton, early days, it was a fairy tale, quote unquote. But you know what happened? Canadian ingenuity.
We do support protecting the environment. We want to ban the dumping of raw sewage into our waters. We want to hold large corporations to high environmental standards to protect our water and air.
Carney did have some trouble recollecting one thing. The Liberal leader repeatedly mixed up the names of two major pipeline projects, Keystone and Trans Mountain.
Keystone, which is the pipeline which has helped to increase oil exports by 50% in this country, that is an asset of the people of Canada. We own it.
So that's actually the Trans Mountain pipeline. That extension was done in 2024. The federal government bought the project back in 2018 for $4.5 billion to get it over the finish line, but the total cost ended up ballooning to $34 billion. Now, another notable moment from the English debate was one that never really happened. Remember those official post-debate interviews with the leaders in French? Well, they got cancelled this time around. The NDP hosted their own news conference, but the others opted out. Right-wing news outlets like Rebel News dominated the night before after they won a court battle to get increased accreditation. Debate organizers said the move was because they couldn't guarantee or promise a proper space where reporters could ask leaders their questions. All right, so those are some of the notable moments from the English debate. You can watch the full exchange between the four party leaders over at CBCNews.ca or head to our YouTube channel.